All right, so 3-1, just in review, it's all about rate of change and slope. Okay, rate of change and slope are the same thing. You can find them in the same way. So for these first two examples in our notes, it says determine whether each rate of change is constant. And then if it is, find the rate of change and explain what it represents. So does anyone remember how to find rate of change or slope from a table? Christian?
So the rate of, like, for the right side has to be equal to, like, so let's just say, so let's say if I ran a marathon and in 1 hour I ran 1 mile, and then the next I ran 3 miles, it will be constant, plus 2 for every single hour. So
Okay.
kind of getting it.
So you're explaining what rate of change is. That's correct. Okay. Yes. Yes, you're going to find the change in y over your change in x. So in this case, our change in y is going up by 2 every time. And our change in x is going up by 1 every time. And that's what makes it a constant rate of change, is that every time it's doing the same thing on both sides. Okay. And so if it is, we're going to find the rate of change. So the answer is yes. And it is 2 is the rate of change. And then we need to explain what this means. For every game, two goals are scored. Okay, so there's 3 things here. This is a constant rate of change. The constant rate of change is 2, and we described what this situation means right here. Okay. All right, so I want you all to look at example 2, and I want you guys to try to figure out what the rate of change is on this one. Does anyone know the rate of change? I mean the change in y? What did he say? 56. It's 56. And what is your change in x? 2. So that means your rate of change is 28, because you would take 56 divided by 2. So this is your rate of change, 28. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of this situation right here?
So for every single gallon used, 28 miles
Or driven, yeah. Or you can even reverse it and say you can drive 28 miles on 1 gallon of gas, or 28 miles per gallon. Okay. All right. All right, so you'll see example homework problems that are just like this. So when you solve them and show your work, this is exactly what I'm going to be looking for. Even your change in y over your change in x. Okay, that's how you show your work. All right, let's go down to examples 3 and 4. All we're going to do from these graphs is find the slope. And just like examples 1 and 2, there's a way to find it. Very simple, is rise over run. That's all you're doing. Okay, so you want to find 2 intersections where the line is crossing. So I can see that it crosses here and it crosses right here. So using my rise, I'm going to rise 2, and my run, I'm running 1. So my slope for this is 2. Okay. Right, and I want you all to try example 4. Okay, anyone have your rise over run? Want to share it? Go ahead, AJ. Yeah, okay, and what direction is your, okay. So he chose points that were actually about 3 away. So he did 3 over -3, which gives you a -1. You could have done 1 over -1 also. So either way that you do it, it's fine. Okay. All right. Any questions about those 3 or those 2?
So how,
Okay, we're going to go down to examples 5 and 6. Now, I'm going to read the directions. The directions are really important because you actually have to do 4 things for each of these problems. You have to determine the dependent and the independent variables for each. Then without graphing, tell whether the slope, the relationship is positive, negative, 0, or undefined. So that's the 3rd thing. Then find the slope. So that's 4 things that you have to do. So for each of these, I want you to write IV for independent variable, DP for dependent variable, REL for relationship, and then slope. Okay, and we're going to find all 4 of these and they'll fit all right there. Okay. All right, so the cost of a Round Rock Christian Academy sweatshirt is $24.50 for 1 sweatshirt and $73.50 for 3 sweatshirts. So we have to first determine the independent and dependent variables. Okay, Andrew?
I found the dependent.
Okay, what's the dependent?
Price.
Okay, so total cost is your dependent. And what does the total cost depend on? The number of sweatshirts. So that would be your independent. Okay, so that was easy. We got 2 down. Now, how can we tell what the relationship is if it's positive, negative, 0, or undefined? Anyone know that? If both quantities, oh, go ahead. How can you tell what the relationship is? Whether it's positive, negative, 0, undefined. Go ahead. Right, both quantities are going up, so it's positive. If one was going up and one was going down, it would be negative. If there was no change, it would be 0. Okay. If it didn't have a relationship, it would be undefined. So in this case, it's positive. Now they want us to find the slope. So this is the part where sometimes we get stuck. The slope is typically what it would cost for 1 sweatshirt, and they already give us a slope. So what is the slope for this one? Yep, $24.50. Now, if you happen to forget that, then what you could do is you can set up your table. Okay, 1 sweatshirt is $24.50. 3 sweatshirts are $73.50. And then you would find your change in Y over your change in X, which would be $73.50 minus $24.50 over 3 minus 1. And then you would solve that. Okay. Which is what you're going to have to do on the next one. So are there any questions on how to do this? No. Okay. Yeah, you're going to get the same thing. You're going to get $24.50. So 24, 34, 44, 54, 64, 74. So it's like 49 over 2. And 49 divided by 2 would be $24.50. Okay, so I want you to try the next one on your own. So independent, dependent, elevation and slope. Okay. Okay, can someone tell me what the independent and dependent variables are? Okay, go ahead, Christian.
For the independent variable, I got, money. The total money.
The FND.
Profit.
Yeah, the deep next to, is a total amount of money versus.
The independent is
analysis.
the profit. Dependent is the hours worked.
Okay, well,
Or
okay,
dependent.
so think of it as earnings and hours. Do your earnings depend on how many hours you work, or do your hours depend on earnings? Earnings depend on, so the earnings are the dependent, or how much money you make. And the independent variable would be hours, because that's what your total earnings depend on. Okay. Now, in looking at the situation, what is the relationship? Positive, because the more hours you work, the more money you get paid, right? Both are going up, both are positive. Did anyone find this slope? Jaden?
It's 750.
Yep. Okay, and if you didn't find the slope, I'm going to show you how to do that. And I would, if you have trouble, please write this down so that you can use these notes to help you with the homework. So 3 hours is $22.50. 15 hours is $112.50. And the reason I know where to put these values is because we said that the hours was the independent variable. The independent variable is X, so that's where my hours go. Okay, and then dependent would be how much I get paid for those hours. So then I take $112.50 minus $22.50, so my change in Y, over my change in X, which would be 15 minus 3. And I end up with, is it 90? 90 over 12, yep. And then in order to figure out my rate of changes, I would actually have to divide these. So 90 divided by 12. Add my decimal and 0 and bring it down, and 12 goes into 65 times. And so that's how I get 7.5 or $7.50 per hour, which is really what it comes down to. Okay, that this employee gets paid $7.50 for every hour they work. Okay. All right, any questions about this? Okay, let's go ahead and move to the back. Okay, these next 4 problems are just using 2 points to find slope. And the way that we do this is we use the slope formula. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1 will give us M, our slope. That's all we're doing. Okay, by this time, more of you are probably being okay with not creating a table. You're able to figure it out without creating a table, but some of you still use the table. Sometimes I do if my numbers are different, like fractions. Okay, so if you can do it in your head, you can see that 2 is Y2 and 0 is Y1. So you would just set it up as 2 minus 0. And then -4 is your X2 and 1 is your X1. So it would be -4 minus 1. No minus, because you're subtracting. Now, if you can't see that, please put your ordered pairs into the table and just do it this way. 2 minus 0 and -4 minus 1, like that. And then the table will help you to place them in the formula correctly. And then you just solve for the slope. 2 minus 0 is 2, and -4 minus 1 is -5. So that would be your slope, -2/5. Okay. All right, I want you all to go ahead and try number 8. Okay, you should have taken 3 minus 8 and 7 minus 3 and gotten negative 5 over 4. All right, any questions about those two?
Never divide.
Now we get to fractions. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to take y2 minus y1. So 4/5 minus 3/5 over x2 minus x1, which would be negative 1/4 minus 1/4. Okay. All right. Now we're just going to simplify these two. So what's 4/5 minus 3/5? 1/5. That's right. What's negative 1/4 minus 1/4? Right. Negative 2/4, because when we have subtracting, we can actually change it to add its opposite. So the opposite of a positive 1/4 would be a negative. So really you have negative 1/4 plus a negative 1/4, which gives us a negative 2/4. Okay. So we have this big, ugly fractions divided by fractions. So I'm going to rewrite this because this is kind of hard to solve this way. Basically, what this is saying is that 1/5 is being divided by negative 2/4. So 1/5 is being divided by negative 2/4. Does anyone remember how to divide fractions? Andrew? And then instead of dividing, what do? You multiply. So we basically change this to multiplying by the reciprocal. So it becomes 1/5 times negative 4/2. Okay. Or 4 over negative 2. It doesn't matter. Your negative just stays there. Yes.
That's an answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Negative 4/10.
Negative 4/10. And then you can simplify this to negative 2/5. And that would be your final answer. So this is just helping you to refresh your memory on how to divide your fractions, because you will have a couple of problems where you might have to divide fractions, okay? All right, the next one is again with fractions, but we actually stop before we even get to the dividing part. So I want you guys to start example 10. I want you to set it up and simplify it down to what it looks like right here. And then we're gonna stop and figure out what the answer is. Okay, so go ahead and start on that. Okay, I'm gonna start setting this up. Okay, so here it is set up. Now 5/6 minus 1/6 is pretty easy. We just get 4/6. Then we have negative 1/3 minus a negative 1/3. Remember, when I have subtraction, I want to change it to adding the opposite. So if I change this to add the opposite of negative 1/3 is positive 1/3, I have a negative 1/3 plus 1/3, which gives me what? 0.
And whenever you divide by 0,
No. 0 divided by 4/6 would give me 0. This does not give me 0. This gives what? Undefined. No one in my last class got that. Well, one claims he got it, but he never said it.
Miss Weatherman, the
Yes.
screen is frozen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hold on just a second. Okay, so there you go. Remember, if your zero's on the bottom, it's undefined. And I believe there are 3 problems on your homework that have answers of undefined. So just keep that in mind. Okay, now we're gonna go to this last part of the first section of our notes. And we are going to use the slope formula above. So this right here, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to solve for a missing point in our ordered pair. Okay, so on this one, we're solving for y. So I'm going to set this up, m, or my slope equals, and then I have y2 minus y1, which is y minus 4, over x2 minus x1, which is 3 minus 7. So before I go on, are there any questions on how I set that up or why it was set up that way? Okay. Now I'm going to look and see if I can simplify any part of this problem. And I can simplify my denominator. So I'm going to come down here and rewrite it. Y minus 4 over negative 4. Now, what does this look like, this problem?
It looks like a
What type of problem? Do you guys remember from, starts with a P, R-O?
Proportion.
Proportion. It looks like a proportion. So with a problem like this, we can cross multiply. And then you won't divide after that. You'll actually just solve the equation. So basically, we're cross multiplying and solving. If you want to put up here cross multiply to help you remember that you can do this, I would. This is not the only way that you could solve these problems, but this is what I have found is the simplest for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by cross multiplying my 1 and negative 4. So 1 times negative 4 gives me a negative 4. And so I did this right here. And now I'm going to cross multiply this right here. And when I write that, I end up with 4 times y minus 4. Actually, it might help if you do it like this. So we did 1 times negative 4 and then 4 times y minus 4. And so now we're going to simplify this. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. And then we distribute and we get 4y minus 16. And now we're just solving the equation. So I feel like I'm going fast. So I'm going to stop here and let you process it for just a second. And if you already get it and you want to move on, just go ahead and solve for y. If you don't get it and you have a question, please ask me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish solving. I add 16 to both sides and I end up with 12 equals 4y. And then I divide both sides by 4 and y equals 3. Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's go over to example 12. We're going to set this up and then we're going to simplify and then cross multiply. So starting with your slope, negative 1/2. And I want you to go ahead and set up the rest on your own. Okay, I want you to look up here. This is what you, something similar to what you should have. I'm going to simplify this a little bit though. I can simplify my negative 2 and 9. So what I did was I took negative 2 minus 9 over here. And then I took x minus a negative 12. But what is minus a negative? It's just a positive. So this is actually plus a positive. So when I rewrite this, I get negative 1/2 equals negative 11 over x plus 12. Okay. Does that make sense? Sort of, maybe. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply my negative 1 times my x plus 12. And that will look like this. Negative 1 times x plus 12. Then I'm going to cross multiply my 2 and negative 11. So 2 times negative 11. And now I'm just going to simplify and solve for x. Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if you could do that on your own. Okay, so I'm gonna distribute my -1 and I end up with -1x minus 12 equals 2 times -11, which is -22. Then I add 12 to both sides. And I ended up with -1x equals -10. And I divide both sides by a -1 and x equals 10. Any questions on that? Okay, I am going
So
to,
this one,